أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Shabbat Jummah program. Inshallah, we will start our program with the recitation of Hadith Kisa followed by Dua Kumail. Tonight being the night of 28th of Rajab, which marks the beginning and the departure of Imam Husain along with his companions and family members to Makkatul Mukarramah. This is where the journey began, a 6-month-long journey, which eventually ended in Karbala initially with the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada and many of his family members, along with his companions. So tonight is, of course, a very important day, and this is the day upon which the family of Sayyid al-Shuhada is getting ready to depart the city of Madina, Madinatul Munawwara. So inshallah, we will have majlis commemorating that, followed by, inshallah, Ziyaratul Warith. For the recitation of Hadith Kisa, I would like to ask Brother Ghulam Heather, let me enable, to go ahead and start out with the recitation of Hadith Kisa. Bismillah.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أماه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله. أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي. قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أماه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، وأتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، واجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا منحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله فإنه نعم قد أذنت لك فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس على البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفر لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله هما ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غما ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها، اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أملي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي. فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاءك وألزمني حكمك وبلاءك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد ما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من آويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك الصادقة وبشكرك مادحة وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سعت إلى وطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها. هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما. لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك. قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حكمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحوض ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشتد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرده ومن كادني فكده واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني منايا، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي، يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء، يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاحه البكاء، يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقم، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وفعل بما أنت أهله، وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى لأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. فاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم الصراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد. There's a request for Surah Fatiha for all the marhumin who we've lost in the recent past, as well as the marhumin of the sponsors tonight. Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim Maliki yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in ihdinas siratal mustaqim siratal ladzina an'amta 'alayhim ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. Also, please recite 5 times Amma Yujib for those who are in need of dua, especially those who are suffering, struggling, going through difficulties. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them quick recovery. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ الْأَرْضِ أَإِلَٰهٌ مَّعَ اللَّهِ قَلِيلًا مَّا تَذَكَّرُونَ. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. As you know, tonight we are commemorating the majlis of the departure of Imam Husain والسلام, along with his family from Medina. To start the majlis, I would request Brother Salman Jafri to start us off with the Marsiya, inshallah. Bismillah.
Thank you, Maulana. Salawat padi ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
इससे पहले कि मैं मर्सी के शेर पेश करूं, 4 मिसरे अगर इजाजत हो मौलाना, एक बार और सलवात पढ़ी अला मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मोहम्मद। इम्तिहाने आशिकी में कैफ पाते हैं हुसैन, इम्तिहाने आशिकी में कैफ पाते हैं حسین اور انتہائی مشکلوں میں مسکراتے ہیں حسین اور انتہائی مشکلوں میں مسکراتے ہیں حسین اور لا فتح الا لا سیف الا ذوالفقار
اللہ سبحان اللہ
لا فتح الا علی لا سیف الا ذوالفقار پڑھتے جاتے ہیں فرشتے بڑھتے جاتے
اللہ
ہیں حسین
اللہم
انتہائی امتحان عاشقی میں بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد
سورہ فاتحہ
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم
مرسی کے چند شعر پیش خدمت ہیں
اللہ
بیت شرف خاص سے نکلے شہ ابرار بیت شرف خاص سے نکلے شہ ابرار روتے ہوئے دیوڑی پہ گئے اطہارت اطہار اور فراشوں کو عباس پکارے یہ بے تکرار پردے کی کناتوں سے خبردار خبردار پردے کی کناتوں سے خبردار خبردار اور باہر حرم آتے ہیں رسول دو سرا کے سب کا کوئی جھک جائے نہ جھونکے سے ہوا کے سکا کوئی جھکے جائے نہ جھونکے سے ہوا کے اور زینت دہے محمل جو ہوئی دختر زہرا ناکوں پہ چڑھے سب حرم سید والا اور آنے لگے رہوار کھلا گرد کا پردہ عباس سے بولے یہ شہ یثرب و بطحا عباس سے بولے یہ شہ یثرب و بطحا، اور صدمہ ہے بچھڑنے کا میرے روح نبی پر، رخصت کو چلو قبر رسول عربی پر، رخصت کو چلو قبر رسول عربی پر، رخصت کو چلو قبر رسول عربی پر، اور ہے قبر پہ نانا کے مقدم مجھے جانا، کیا جانیے پھر ہو کہ نہ ہو شہر میں آنا، اور اماں کی ہے تربت پہ ابھی اشک بہانا، اس مرکز انور کو ہے آنکھوں سے لگانا، اس مرکز انور کو ہے آنکھوں سے لگانا، اور آخر تو لیے جاتی ہے تقدیر وطن سے، چلتے ہوئے ملنا ہے ابھی قبر حسن سے، چلتے ہوئے ملنا ہے ابھی قبر حسن سے، اور پیدل شہیدی روزہ احمد کو سدھارے، تربت سے صدا آئی کہ آ میرے پیارے، اور تعویذ سے شبیر لپٹ کر یہ پکارے، ملتا نہیں آرام نواسے کو تمہارے، ملتا نہیں آرام نواسے کو تمہارے، اور خط کیا ہے اجل کا یہ پیام آیا ہے نانا، آج آخری رخصت کو غلام آیا ہے نانا، آج آخری رخصت کو غلام آیا ہے نانا، اور میں ایک تنہا ہوں ستمگار ہزاروں، ایک جان ہے اور در پہ آزار ہزاروں، اور ایک پھول سے رکھتے ہیں خلیش خار ہزاروں، ایک سر ہے فقط اور خریدار ہزاروں، ایک سر ہے فقط اور خریدار ہزاروں، اور وہاں جمع کئی شہر کے خون ریز ہوئے ہیں، خنجر میری گردن کے لیے تیز ہوئے ہیں، خنجر میری گردن کے لیے تیز ہوئے ہیں، بیت شرف خاص بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات، اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد
محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أحسنتم جزاكم الله. Thank you very much, Salman, for that beautiful recitation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your ibadat and all of our ibadat tonight. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين آمنوا وهاجروا وجاهدوا في سبيل الله بأموالهم وأنفسهم أعظم درجة عند الله وأولئك هم الفائزون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. As you know, tonight we are commemorating this majlis for the departure of Imam Husain, also known as Rawangi Sayyid al-Shuhada, from Madina al-Munawwara, which took place in the 60th year after Hijrah on 28th day of the month of Rajab. And this began that long journey for Ahl Haram to go from their home to Makkah al-Mukarramah, where the initial purpose was to find refuge and stay in Makkah. But of course, because of these circumstances, Imam ﷺ eventually had to leave the city of Makkah to safeguard the sanctity of the city. And Imam left around the time of Hajj, and for about 3 weeks, following next 3 weeks, Imam traveled between Makkah, which was originally supposed to be towards Kufa, but eventually ended up being Karbala. Every year we commemorate this majlis to mark that important journey of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and the points that we can derive aside from the historical aspect and the importance of this journey of Imam, this hijrat of Imam. Of course, whenever there is a difficulty upon you, ayat of Quran and the sirat of Rasulullah, who himself migrated, ordered his companions and family members to migrate, highlights the importance of this phenomena. For that reason, I chose this ayat from Surah Tawbah, which is one of the many ayat in Quran that talk about the concept of hijrat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah says, those who brought Iman and then they did hijrat. So Iman is preceding their migration. Why? Because of this Iman, then they would be able to perform what is called jihad fi sabilillah. They'll be able to prepare themselves for that jihad fi sabilillah. وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ. In some ayat of Quran, بِأَنفُسِهِمْ has come before بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ, but here it's بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ, which tells you that this is probably referring towards a hijrat, which might not involve in particularly them taking part in any battle. So therefore, what is needed is them to do jihad in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their wealth, by giving their possessions in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in that regards, all of us are also sharik and partners and subject of this ayat. Because all of us, alhamdulillah, after having brought Iman, and we some way have done this migration, What remains upon us is this jihad fi sabilillah with our wealth. So for a mu'min, it is incumbent that they perform this jihad in the way of Allah with their wealth. What does that mean with their wealth? Is so that they'll be able to perform their duties, the obligations that they have as far as the distribution and what is wajib upon them as far as the portion of their wealth is concerned, whether it's in the form of zakat, whether it's in the form of khums or any other infaq for that matter. So initially they have to show that they are ready for this bigger sacrifice, but the minor sacrifice is through their wealth. وَأَنفُسِهِمْ. And once they're ready and they've shown their readiness with their wealth, that they can let go of the wealth. They're not too attached with it. They need this wealth, but they're able to separate it from themselves. Only then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test them وَأَنفُسِهِمْ with their nufus. Guess what the result of all of this is? Iman along with hijrat and jihad with their wealth and with their nafs. Four things are being mentioned. أَعْظَمُ دَرَجَةً عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. These are the people who have the highest and the most exalted place near Allah. أَعْظَمُ دَرَجَةً عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. Not in the, for example, so-and-so, a king or a president or a leader or a minister or someone who's in power. No, أَعْظَمُ دَرَجَةً عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. They possess the highest rank near Allah. And if that was enough further stamp of approval by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this very ayat of Surah Tawbah, ayat number 20, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَائِزُونَ. And these are the people who are successful. So don't look no further as far as the formula for success is concerned. And as I said, this ayat is begging and asking all of us to be the subject of this ayat. It doesn't have to be just those people who lived in the time of Rasulullah, whether this ayat had come upon them, so therefore they are definitely subject of it, but it affects every single one of us. This is one of those ayat of Quran which is applicable to all of us, because there's the involvement of hijrat, there's the involvement of jihad with our wealth and with our nufus in order to attain the highest rank near Allah and to attain that ultimate success. So of course there's much to talk about as far as this ayat is concerned. Faith, hijrat, jihad, similar to taqwa, are top virtues in the Allah as opposed to in the nas. Why do we even look for the virtues in the nas? But unfortunately, the reality is that we look for virtues in the nas, near people. If so-and-so considers me to be great, then I feel something. I don't really feel anything if Allah, that I am considered to be great near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So much to learn from it. Iman and correct faith leads to other virtues and other perfections. Hijrat and jihad are going hand in hand over here. Essence of every good or holy action is based on your niyat. So therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he said fi sabilillah, right away declared that when you're doing this jihad, has to be fi sabilillah, cannot be for the sake of someone else. If it's for the sake of someone else, then of course it will not have that grandeur, that taqaddus, that holiness that it should be with when it's being done for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly, when Allah says fawz, ulaika humul faizun, fawz refers to salvation. Can only be achieved under iman and then hijrat and jihad. There are many, as I said, similar verses. I'll just highlight a few before I get to the actual majlis, where you find in Surah Anfal, ayat number 74, you find similar words being used. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَهَاجِرُوا وَجَاهِدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And then, of course, the matter towards the end is different. It says, these are ulaika humul mu'minuna haqqa, that these are definitely the mu'min or the faithful ones, haqqan, truthfully. Similarly, in Surah Baqarah 218, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أُولَٰئِكَ يَرْجُونَ رَحْمَةَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. So that also refers to the iman, hijrat, and jihad in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you find in Surah Hujurat, ayat number 15, it says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. So there's this middle part which is similar, slightly different, that those who brought iman on Allah and the Prophet, and then they never doubted them. This could be those who are the representative of Rasulullah, those who are the successors of Rasulullah, they fall in this category as well. And when you've brought iman onto their imamat, so you've brought iman on Allah, the Rasul, and the successor of the Rasul, ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا, then don't doubt as to what they're about to do. There are many people who were doubting Imam Husain when he began that journey of his. A lot of people were opposing Imam's travel out of their well wish, because they were family members, such as Salma, and as well as other family members who opposed Imam, or not really opposed, they didn't want Imam to go because of his departure. They thought Imam staying in Medina would be preferable. But of course, they didn't have ilm ghaib and the outcome and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for Imam in future. But there were many people who doubted Imam alayhi salatu wasalam. They questioned Imam Husain alayhi salatu wasalam as to why you're leaving. Some even gave, their invaluable advice to Imam, that go ahead and do bayat of Yazid. Why don't you do what everyone else has done? How bad could it be that you go ahead and pay allegiance to Yazid? You'll safeguard yourself and you'll safeguard your family as well. But if you don't, then you'll perish and your family will perish as well. The Imam gave answer to all of these people. And then in Surah Nisa, number 100 also talks about the concept of hijrat. And then in Surah Hajj, ayat number 58, similar ayat, وَالَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ قُتِلُوا أَوْ مَاتُوا لَيَرْزُقَنَّهُمُ اللَّهُ رِزْقًا حَسَنًا. Those who do hijrat in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ثُمَّ قُتِلُوا, whether they're killed, martyred, or they die. So whether they're martyred, if they were in battlefield, or they die simply. What does he say? لَيَرْزُقَنَّهُمُ اللَّهُ رِزْقًا حَسَنًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most definitely will provide them rizq hasan. It's sustenance which is virtuous. So all of these ayat stacked up together give you an idea of the importance of this hijrah. So there's concept of hijrat in Islam. I've spoken about this in the past as well, so I won't dwell too much into it tonight. That there are different types of migrations, different types of hijrat that exist. So hijrat and muhajir, from the beginning in Islam, those who traveled with Rasulullah, left Mecca, went to Medina, they were called muhajirun. And those who received these muhajirun were called ansar. So you had these two groups of the followers and the companions of Rasulullah who are muhajirin and ansar. From the concept as to which one of these three different types of hijrat are important, I'll leave that to your understanding. First type of hijrat is from being a disbeliever to a believer. Someone who did not believe in the religion of Islam, then converted. So there were a lot of people from the beginning of Islam who converted because they were practicing shirk, polytheism, and they came toward the monotheistic religion, specifically Islam, on the da'wah of Rasulullah. And today we also see that a lot of people convert and they come toward Islam. They end up being the better Muslims than many of us, because they didn't take this religion for granted like you and I have, because we were born in a Muslim family. Examples of Bilal Habishi, and then the later status that he attained, and many such people in our contemporary time as well, those who became very prominent scholars. Number two, from being disobedient to obedient, becoming a better person, a better mu'min and a Muslim. That's why many riwayat highlight this concept that afdalul hijra an tahjuru ma karihallah. The best of the hijrat is to leave that which despises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kirahat from. That which Allah dislikes, you leave that thing, and that is best of the hijrat. In fact, afdalul hijra an tahjura su, that any evil and staying away from evil is the best type of hijrat, that you don't go towards it. Or if you were involved in it, now you leave it. That's considered to be the best type of hijrat. And then Imam further elaborates by saying, Al-Muhajir man hajar al-khataya wal-dunub. Muhajir is someone, the one who migrated, someone who left the lapses and the mistakes and the sins that he had committed. And of course, the third type of hijrah is from one land to another land. And of course, to be able to practice your religion, because that's what this initial hijrat of Rasulullah was for, that they were being persecuted in the city of Mecca, and there was a boycott. They had to live in Shi'ab Abi Talib for 3 years. And so eventually they were invited by the people of Madina, and so they traveled. Similarly, Imam Husain, he left the city of Madinatul Munawwara because of the demands of the ruler of the time, asking for allegiance, and Imam ﷺ not being able to practice the deen in the proper way. Imam left Madinatul Munawwara. So there's an entire chapter in fiqh about our jurisprudence about hijrah, that your travel should not be that it takes you away from your religion, that it takes you away from your deen, that you are a better Muslim staying back if you came to a place where you're actually now it's difficult for you. Not that anyone is stopping you, but you're further getting away from your deen, then this is considered to be ma'asiyat itself. In fact, this type of hijrat is not allowed, it's forbidden. At-ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrat, there's an entire chapter, as I mentioned, in our books of fiqh that talks about that your safar, your travel should not be for ma'asiyat, for disobedience. Safar, your travel should be for Islam, so you can become a better person, a better Muslim. So we have many of such travels, like the first hijrah of Muslimin under the leadership of Ja'far al-Tayyar. They migrated to Abyssinia. Second, Prophet's migration itself, which of course, the beginning of the Hijri calendar. So we are right now in the year 1442. It's been 1442 years since that migration of Rasulullah from Mecca to Medina. And of course, in the year 60 after Hijrah, Imam Husain on 28th of Rajab migrated from Medina to Makkatul Mukarramah. Intentions of staying there, but of course, not being allowed to practice the deen over there and to safeguard the sanctity of the haram of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam leaves Mecca as well. But when Imam was leaving Medina itself, he made sure that any doubters, those who might have questions and might doubt why Imam is going, Imam made sure that he satisfied, not that he had to, but he made sure that he satisfied the people. And this kalam of Imam, I'm sure you've heard it numerous times, is very jami', that means all-encompassing, which tells people Imam's intentions, his niyat, the purpose behind it, so that nobody is in doubt as to why Imam is leaving. In fact, he used those specific words so that people don't doubt what is Imam about to do. إني لم أخرج عشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما. That my khuruj, my rise, my departure is not to cause any sort of shar, evil, or fasad, corruption, or unjust, zulm, injustice, and none of those things. Nor do I want any personal gain out of this. This is not for self glorification or personal agenda. No, none of these are the purposes behind my khuruj. And if anyone doubts, Imam further said, he said, إِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. So it wasn't for these things. In fact, it is for this particular reason. Indeed, innama, we all are aware of the word innama. Innama is for hasr. That means it limits the scope. Imam is limiting the scope of his khuruj. He says, innama kharajtu لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي. The purpose behind my khuruj is to attain and seek the reform in the ummah of my grandfather. أريد أن أمر بالمعروف. How am I going to achieve this? By performing Amr bil Maruf, by doing Nahi anil Munkar, by following and showing people the real sirat of Rasulullah. Wa asira bisirat jaddi wa Abi Ali ibn Abi Talib. These are the guidelines of my travel. فمن قبلني بقبول الحق فالله أولى بالحق ومن رد علي هذا أصبر حتى يقضي الله بيني وبين القوم بالحق. Whoever follows me, then they are definitely Allah. It's the path of haqq, it's the path of Allah. And whoever does not obey or goes away me, وَمَنْ رَدَّ عَلَيَّ هَذَا, then I will do sabr until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will decide between me and that qawm. So the background of it all is that Walid ibn Utbah ibn Abi Sufyan, who's the governor of Medina at that time, he summons Imam to the governor house and asks Imam to pay allegiance to Yazid, informs that Muawiyah has died and he has placed Yazid as his successor, and now this is the custom that you have to pay allegiance to Yazid. Imam Husain didn't pay allegiance to Muawiyah, let alone he'll pay allegiance to Yazid. Those people who doubt and create these misunderstandings should understand that Imam lived in the under the reigns of Muawiyah at that time, who was, of course, usurped the right to rule. Amir al-Mu'mineen had it. He continuously fought him. And then after the shahadat of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, Imam Hassan, who assumed the wilayat of Ummah and to lead the Ummah, he usurped it from Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wasalam. And while the peace treaty forbade him from placing anyone as his wali and waris, he went against that, that peace treaty that Imam Hassan had made. But nonetheless, Imam Hassan didn't pay allegiance, nor did Imam Hussein. Now they're asking to pay allegiance to Yazid. You know what response Imam gave? Classic. He said, Mithli la yubayi'u mithlah. Person like me, someone like me, does not pay allegiance to someone like him. Now this is the response. Imam could have said easily, Hussein, la yubayi'u Yazid. And that would have been a clear-cut answer. But Imam wants to set things straight. Someone like me, not now, not until the day of judgment, will not do bay'ah to someone like him, not now, not until the day of judgment. And therefore Imam comes back home, gathers this. Of course, there's a lot of history in this whole event. Imam went with his family members. Qamar ibn Hashim, Hazrat Abul Fadl Abbas is also waiting outside. Imam brought him when he went to speak, had given him instructions that if things go south, what you're going to do, because there could have been easily taken Imam's life over there. But anyway, all of that happens, Imam comes back home, finds his sister, Bibi Zainab Kubra Salamullahi alayha, tells her that it is time for us to leave the city of Medina. We can no longer stay in this city. The city in which we grew up, the city which is associated with our grandfather, Rasulullah, and all of our childhood has passed in this city. Now we have to say bid farewell to this city. So Imam gathers all of his family. He takes every single one of the persons from his family. It is mentioned that he didn't leave anyone behind, and he took them with him. Even those who were maybe a day or two old, those who were still infants, Imam ﷺ took them with him. Imam left, and he entered the city of Mecca on the third day of Shaban. So from 28th of Rajab, about 5 days travel from Medina to Mecca. When Imam entered the city of Mecca, Imam saw over there Umar ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, who had entered the city with the qasd and the intention to kill Imam. Imam stayed until the time of Hajj, and then Imam had to leave the city of Mecca as well, because of course he didn't want to desecrate the sanctity of Haqq. Of course, Maut is barhaq, and Imam is not running away from Maut. But there's a way, and there's a purpose, and there's a reason for all of these events. Imam ﷺ did not want the blessed land of Mecca, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appreciates a great deal. This Safa and Marwa are considered to be Sha'airullah. The most favorite land which Allah brags about in Quran is Mash'arul Haram. In the plains of Muzdalifah, those are the lands where in Quran Allah tells us that these are his most favorite places. Would you go ahead and shed blood in those places? So Imam realizes this, and therefore he leaves Makkatul Mukarramah. And then along the way, this is about a 3-week-long journey that Imam has to go through. Now, of course, these aren't the best of the traveling conditions. You're traveling in what is called Rub'ul Khali, that quarter in the Arabian Peninsula, which is of course empty. They go through the severe conditions in a desert-like place, and to eventually their aim and hadaf was the city of Kufa. Why? Because city of the Kufa is the place from which many of Imam's well-wishers had invited him. Many of these people, about 18,000 signatories, some riwayat say 12,000, some riwayat say 18,000 people had signed letter and had sent it to Imam Husain. Now, how all of this happens, of course, Imam ﷺ sends his Safir, the Safir of Imam, Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil, who is the first martyr of all of this, goes to Kufa to make sure that Imam is aware of what's happening in the city of Kufa. So Imam begins his travel. He knows that these are the people who are waiting for him. When this Khattu Kitabat was done, this letter went back and forth. These people asked Imam to come and guide them to the right path. So Imam feels this is his obligation. And along the way, the first place that Imam stops is the place called Tanim. This is where one of the caravans were traveling to bring the needs and the things for the Aish and the luxuries of Yazid. Imam ﷺ got a hold of them and distributed the belongings to the people. And he said, people are more in need, not the Hakim. And then Imam continued his journey. They arrive in a place called Safa. This is where Imam met that famous poet, Farazdaq, who was going to Mecca. And upon asking him as to what is cooking in Kufa? What's happening in Kufa? Farazdak said that famous line. He said, their hearts are with you, but their swords are against you. They might still be very loyal to you as far as their hearts and their faith is concerned. They believe that you are the true leader, you are the Imam. But of course, they're weak as far as their faith is concerned, and therefore their swords have turned against you. And of course, the Imam hasn't heard from Muslim ibn Aqil yet, so Imam continues his trip. And then Imam arrives at a place which is called Dhatul Irq. Here Imam meets Bishr, who, saw Imam was leaning towards the wall, asked Imam as far as why is he going towards the Kufa. Imam opened up the bag of all the letters that he had received from these people. He said, the purpose is these letters. These people are waiting for me. They're invited me. If Imam doesn't go, this is where people of the Kufa can turn around and say, well, look, we invited Imam. Imam did not show up. If Imam had gone to another city, as some has suggested, go towards Yemen, people would have said that Imam was afraid. And so he avoided the conflict and he left and went in another direction. In fact, if there's one place in all of Muslim empire at that time, because the empire has spread to quite some distances, it was only the people of Kufa who had invited Imam alayhi salatu wasalam. People of Yemen didn't invite Imam. People of Egypt did not invite Imam. Or other places, notable places, they didn't invite Imam. If there was one place that had at least shown inclination in inviting Imam, that was Kufa. So why else Imam would go anywhere else? So Imam was continuing on that path. Then Imam arrives at a place which is called Hajar. Imam set up the tents over there, and Imam writes a letter to Muslim ibn Aqil and sends this letter with Qais to go ahead and get it to Muslim ibn Aqil. But of course, as Qais arrived in Kufa, he was apprehended by the people of Ibn Ziyad. And of course, this letter never really arrives in the hand of Muslim ibn Aqil. Imam thinks that he should continue. So his travel continues. He comes around and comes to a place by the name Khuzaima, and which is also near the place called Zarud. Here also, people were stopping Imam that don't go to Kufa. This is not a wise decision at the moment. But of course, Imam hasn't heard from Muslim ibn Aqil. Now, someone might say, well, does really Imam need to wait for a maktub, a letter from Muslim, to change his mind? No, Imam is also, he can use his ilm ghaib. He can use his karamat. He can find out in an instant as to what is happening. Today, in the 21st century, we have the ability to find out what's happening around the globe, on the other side of the world. We can easily search that up. We can easily get the news from across the globe. So it has become easy for us to get that, right? That information has become feasible. Nobody will question if someone says, oh, I have the news from, Europe or Asia or Southeast Asia or Far East. So what? Anyone can gain access to that. Anyone who has the access to the internet, they'll be able to find out what's happening over there. So without doing any miracle, you and I are able to gain access to that knowledge, which is far away from us, because the means are now available. So now the means are available for us, but these means, there was no hijab for Masumin. So these hijabat could have been easily lifted, and Masumin can easily find out these things, which you and I can do today without anyone really becoming astonished about it, surprised about it, as to how did you gain that knowledge. It's very simple for us. Nobody will question. Similarly, at that time, 14 centuries ago, these things are simple and easy for Masumin. But Imam is on a path, going for a cause. There's a purpose behind all of this. And this is a journey that Imam has to take. There's no way around it. This is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he has to fulfill. This is the command of Rasulullah. He had already shown Imam Husain that this is the course of actions that will happen. He had already informed his family members. Even from the time when Imam Husain was born, he had already informed the family members by crying, by weeping over Sayyid al-Shuhada. He told him that my son will be killed and martyred in that land. So all of this has to happen while Imam is showing that I'm waiting for my messenger, Muslim ibn Aqil, to hear from. That is to satisfy the people around. But Imam knows the purpose behind it. So I hope that clarifies why Imam is not paying heed to these people who are telling him, don't go to Kufa. We're coming from there. What's happening over there is not in your favor. So then Imam continues his journey. He stops at a place which is called Thalibiyah, and where people say, how are you going to fight these people who with your women and children that you're going with? Of course, Imam shows them the letters. Then Imam arrives at a place called Shuqqa. This is also where Imam says, whatever Allah wishes, this is what I have been commanded. Then Imam arrives at a place called Zubala. This is where Imam hears about one of his messengers, Abdullah ibn Yaqtar, who passed away. Then Imam arrives in a place called Bintul Uqba. This is a place where Imam sees a dream. And after seeing a dream, Imam wakes up and he tells his companions that what is about to happen to us. I've seen a dream that we are walking toward maut and death. This is where Imam's son, Hazrat Ali Akbar, stands up and says to his father, "Oh Baba, are we not on haqq?" Imam said, "Absolutely we are." He said, "Are they, the Yazidis, they're not on batil?" He said, "Absolutely they are on batil." He said, "Then what do we care? If we come upon the death or death takes over us, it doesn't really matter as long as we are on the path of haqq." Imam moves forward and then eventually arrives at a place called Sharaf. This is where Imam runs into Hur ibn Yazid Riyahi. Imam provides water to the thirsty caravan of Hur, not only just his people, but also Imam provides to his animals as well. And of course, we all know what happened after that. Imam decides to move. Hur would not allow Imam to continue that path. He said, "I have strict orders to take you toward Kufa." Now, Imam at this point has heard from Muslim ibn Aqil that he was martyred, that his shahadat has taken place. He was mercilessly killed. He was hanged from Darul Amara. And the tragic shahadat of Muslim, Imam is now aware of. Imam then decides to go in this alternate direction, where when he arrives, this place where his horse would not move any further. It is mentioned that Imam changed 7 different horses, but none would move forward. Imam asked the people over there, "What is the name of this place?" Someone said Shati ul Furat. Imam said, "There must be another name." Someone said Nainaba. He said, "There must be another name." Said Ghadiriya. Imam said, "What else is this place called?" It's called Karbala. Imam said, this is Karbala. This is the place which is called Karbala, and this is the place where our blood will be shed. This is the place where the children of Banu Hashim, they will be massacred. This is the place. Imam ﷺ had prepared everyone. There were many people who did not want to come along with Imam, but because of Imam's tarbiyat, because of how Imam continued this journey, there were these people who came along. There are many such people who had the sharaf of receiving the letter from Imam, the invitation from Imam. There were people such as Habib ibn Mudahir, to whom Imam writes, invites him to come and join him in this path, in this journey. There were people such as Zuhair ibn Qayn, who were traveling along a little bit distance to Imam, who initially did not want to come with Imam, but after seeing what Imam showed him, he comes and joins Imam as well. This safar that began from the 28th day of Rajab comes to a conclusion on the 2nd day of Muharram, when Imam entered into the lands of Karbala. The next 9 days are the most difficult days for Ahl Bayt. These are the children who have grown up in the household of Khatamul Anbiya, Sayyidul Mursaleen. These are the people, these are not ordinary women. These are the women who had never stepped out of their house unnecessarily. Yet these are the women now who are leading the caravan. Comes the day of Ashur, Imam Husain ibn Ali gives that ultimate sacrifice, that sacrifice for which Imam والسلام, was chosen. That Dhibh Azim that began from Hazrat Ismail, the tahakkuk and the implication of that Dhibh Azim could be seen in Karbala. On the 10th day of Muharram al-Haram, the day which is known as Ashura, Imam والسلام, sacrifices his companions initially. Those who went early were the lucky ones because they didn't have to suffer the heat of the day. Those who went after were the people and the family members of Imam. One after another, Imam is giving the shahadat, and after every one of them have given their Nazrana aqidat, and they have all been martyred, Imam والسلام, enters the battlefield. Of course, his son, Imam Zainul Abidin, is not fit to be part of this battle. So Imam leaves him. He's been left over for a purpose so that the Imamat continues. Imam Husain goes, performs that jihad, and eventually he hears Nidaya Asmani, which says, Ya Ayyatuhan Nafsul Mutma'inna. Oh, that serene soul, return to your Lord in the state that you are Razi and your Lord is Razi with you. Imam puts his sword away. The enemy gather around and surround him. Everyone is throwing something at Imam, and Imam is just surrounded by these enemies. Not only that they're throwing whatever they have, but they're also using their tongue to taunt Imam, and eventually Imam succumbs to all of the injuries. He lands on the plains of Karbala, but he asks his horse to take him near another place. I say, oh Imam, how do you know what is your final resting place? He said, my mother, Fajanab Fatimatul Zahra, she was there cleaning that place with her own hair so that I would be resting over there. Ala lanatullah al-qawm al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إن لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Oh Allah, we have committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Oh Allah, give us the tawfiq to be able to follow the commands and the teachings of Masumin alayhim salatu wassalam. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam. Make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Mutawajjih ziyarat. Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum Nabi Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Habib Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Khiyaratullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, ziyarat waris. Assalamu alaikum ya waris Adam Safatillah, assalamu alaikum ya waris Nuhin Nabiillah, assalamu alaikum ya waris Ibrahim Khalilillah, assalamu alaikum ya waris Musa Kalimillah, assalamu alaikum ya waris Isa Ruhillah, assalamu alaikum ya waris Muhammadin Habibillah. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها، وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والهجة على أهل الدنيا، وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليكم السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباء، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله ووداء، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصح، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بيبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. زيادة العباس. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي، فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استهلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام، فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر. السلام والأخ الدافع عن أخيه، المجيب إلى طاعة ربه، الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، وأهل حقق الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وعنيس النفوس أيها المدفون بأرض توس، علي بن مصر ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك إمام الإنس والجان، السلام عليك شريك القرآن، أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك وأنصارك، ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد.